the what's happened is I've studied savants way, especially some of them that are very talented, but also may have some severe limitations, is that they know things they never learned. Stephen Wiltshire knows the rules of music, but he's never had any formal training. And
Okay.
Lemke, who was a musical savant that I worked with here in Wisconsin, he knows the rules of music, and yet he's blind. He can't read music,
Mm.
never had any training. And professional musicians who know him now say he knows what I've spent my whole lifetime. He just knows it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what I call knowing things that we never learned. Well,
Okay.
how is that possible? Well,
Yes.
the only way that it's possible, as far as I'm concerned, is through the genetic transmission of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're used to the idea that our genes tell us how tall we're going to be, or the color of our eyes, or the color of our hair, or our posture, or even some behavioral traits. And I'm saying that in addition to inheriting all of that, we also inherit knowledge.
Mm.
And so the brain, we don't start with a blank disc. You know, the feeling many times is that we start life with a blank disc and become what we put on it through education and experience.
Yeah.
Saying, the brain comes loaded with all sorts of software in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And many times we tend to we use the same pathways pretty much because they serve us pretty well. But within all of us is this dormant capacity. And the thing that has, I've had that suspicion for a long time, but in the last 10 years or so, I've seen more and more what I call acquired savants.
Okay.
These are people who are normal individuals like you and I, who are what we call neurotypical is the right word these days.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a head injury, or they get struck by lightning, or they have a stroke, and all of a sudden they are geniuses at art or music, which was there before, that they have no interest in that before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's not a lot of those. I've got about 30 some cases now like that, but they've tapped into that reservoir of that was there, that was dormant through this injury or illness. So it seems to me that we all have that dormant capacity. Now, we're not all little Picassos or Rembrandts.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that we come with different levels of talent. For example, some of us are athletic and some of us are not.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us are mathematic and some of us are not. Some of us are artistic and some are not. Some are musical, and within the musical ability of normal people, there's this huge range of people who are, with no music ability to those who are geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not suggesting that we all have that genius capacity, but we do have these. And Dr. Alan Snyder, who's a researcher in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
has come to the since many of the acquired savants, the injury is to the left anterior temporal area.
Okay.
And on brain scans, especially in people with dementia. And so he said, well, and it seems as if there's brain damage, and then there's a recruitment of some other area that's still intact, which accounts for the ability. So he said, well, what if we temporarily immobilized the left anterior temporal area in normal individuals? Would some savant abilities emerge?
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, using something called transmagnetic simulation, RTMS, you can put part of the cortex to deactivate it, and sure enough, now in his most recent work, particularly, he started with art, which is a little subjective as to the before, during, and after, but now he's done some things with counting and with problem solving that can really be measured. And so, lo and behold, in these normal volunteers, there are some savant ability emerge with this left anterior temporal link. So now, it seems to me that is the phenomena. The big question is, how can you tap that without having a stroke or,
Yes.
or some headgear on your head?
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we're sort of beginning to work now. There's an interesting book by a woman by the name of Betty Edwards.
Betty Edwards, yes.
New drawing on the right side of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And what she does is to take people who are not particularly skilled at drawing, like me. I'm not very good at art at all. And she will teach them how to draw, just like you would teach somebody a second language. And what she finds is that, first of all, she's able to tap that ability. And secondly, that it tends to free up a lot of right hemisphere skills in general. And now, the reason that it's used by corporations, they will send their executives to learn how to draw, not to learn how to draw, but because it taps into that area of the brain which has to do with creativity and vision and seeing the big picture.
Yes.
And in the executives, you want somebody who can see the big picture, not just count widgets. So that's one way. So sometimes I just think for all of us that without having a stroke or getting hit by lightning, that if we, what I call, rummage around on our right hemisphere a little bit more, brain society, logical, sequential thinking and language serve us very well. We tend to use those pathways pretty much. And music and art, well, that's sort of, that's kind of a little fuzzy, and I'll get to when I retire, then I'll be things. But now I've got to, got to pay attention to the accounting principles and all that. I'm saying that one way to tap into those areas is to do it a little sooner, not waiting until you retire or have the time, but really find some area of interest that may seem a little frivolous, or it may seem like I happen to have an orchard, and I'm learning a little bit about raising fruits and so forth and so on. It would be, I can buy the apples cheaper in the store than raising them myself, and I could hire an orchard master to do my orchard, but I do it myself because I'm learning about the sex life of trees. Some need somebody, and some don't, and the whole idea of why some trees take a couple of years off. And now I could, as I said, I could buy my apples cheaper at the store, but it's just an area that I'm learning about, and I go back and find out that there's a whole fund of knowledge about that one can learn about, and so that's what I call rummaging around in my right hemisphere. Maybe it's music, maybe it's art, maybe it is math, or it may be geology or archaeology or something. And so I think there's less dramatic ways to do that. And I've been talking about with people trying to, and many, once they begin to do some of that, find out that there's a whole world out there that they didn't know about, and that's very enriching to them. Even though, as I said, it would be cheaper to, hire somebody to cut the grass rather than to on your tractor. I love to be on my little tractor out of my land. And that's what I do some of my best thinking. So I think that's what. So I've learned a lot from the savants, and I've learned that there is an island of intactness in each of them, and our task is to find it and then to go and run with it. I've learned from them also that they know things they didn't learn. That means that not only they, but we too have that store of information and can enrich our own lives by rummaging around a little bit and finding areas of interest that we didn't see before. And I guess the other thing that I've learned from savants is the power of the family, and that there is simply no substitute for a family that believes in their child and encourages the child, accepts the child, and love is a good therapist too. And I keep telling parents will write to me every day and they say, I've got a son or daughter who would, and they'll describe the ability, and they want some direction or have some questions, and they tend to disqualify themselves, saying, well, I'm not an expert in art or music, and I know that, or autism autism. But I say, no, you're not an expert in it. But you love that child, and that love comes through those messages so strong. And I've seen the power that has in some of these, like Leslie Lemke, who's or even Stephen Wiltshire or Tony DuBois, where a parent or the family, sometimes the grandma, a boy who's an artist, and his grandma discovered his ability to make these collages with little slips of paper, and she just was proud as heck of him, and now he's pretty well known. Thing. So while it is true that in the autistic youngster there may be some unusual circuitry and so forth, the fact is that a big element in this helping these youngsters is the family belief, patience, prayer, whatever, and that is a vital component to